welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something really pretty surprising from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix.
Yeah, what's that?
This whole strategic thing between Williams's Alex Albon and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz.
Ah, yes! The Ferrari helping out the Williams, that definitely turned some heads.
Exactly, a Ferrari driver actively giving a competitor a leg up. It's not something you see every day.
No, definitely not. And we've been digging into some F1 blogs, looking at the race radio, the telemetry, all that good stuff.
Right, trying to figure out the why and the how of it all.
Yeah, basically unpack what this whole move tells us about F1 strategy. It's like getting a little peek behind the curtain, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, so let's set the scene.
Yeah.
You had Albon in the Williams, and he's got this Haas Hojard driving right on his tail, and Hojar's on fresher, softer tires.
Which means potentially quite a bit faster, especially as the stint went on. Big pressure on Albon.
Huge pressure. So Williams gets on the radio to Sainz, who's running just ahead of Albon.
Right.
And tells him basically, hey, give Albon your DRS.
Let him use your slipstream and the drag reduction system boost on the straights.
Yeah. But what's really interesting is Sainz's first reaction. You could hear it on the radio.
Yeah.
He wasn't immediately convinced, was he?
No, not at all. He basically said something like, hey, are you guys being a bit paranoid? I think Hojar on the medium tires.
Yeah.
He's not going to pass us.
So he thought he had enough pace himself.
Yeah.
And maybe worried about his own race.
Exactly. He probably felt, he was controlling the gap fine, and maybe getting involved like this could compromise his position if it went wrong.
Yeah, makes sense. But the team was pretty blunt.
Oh, yeah. The instruction came back clear. Do it.
No messing around. And Sainz, well, he just replied, veil.
Okay.
He got the message.
Okay.
So he complied.
So this DRS train idea, how is it supposed to work in theory here to help Albon?
Well, the idea is pretty simple, really, but effective. If Sainz stays just ahead of Albon within that 1 second DRS detection window,
right,
Albon can open his rear wing flap on the designated straights. That cuts drag, gives him a speed boost, making it much harder for Hojar, even on better tires, to get close enough to actually make a pass on those streets.
Precisely. It's like Sainz is giving Albon an aerodynamic tow, but, using the rules of DRS.
And if Sainz also had DRS available from a car ahead of him, though I don't think he did here.
No, he didn't in this case. But yeah, if he had, that would make it even harder for Hojar, because both cars ahead would be pulling away slightly on the straights.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what about Sainz's own thinking? The F1 blogs you looked into suggested he had his own kind of internal strategy going on.
Oh, definitely. It wasn't just blind obedience. He seemed to calculate that, okay, to give Albon DRS effectively, he might have to slow down a bit, maybe even let Albon get really close, perhaps even risk losing the position himself temporarily.
He actually thought he might drop behind both of them.
It seems that way, yeah. His radio suggested he thought, I'm going to lose the position, maybe anticipating he could fight back later.
Okay. So a calculated risk.
But a risk nonetheless. Because he also flagged up, be careful, Albon with DRS is 0.5 faster than you.
Meaning if Albon gets that boost.
He might just become too quick for Sainz to actually catch and repass later on. Sainz could end up stuck behind the car he just helped.
Wow. That shows some serious understanding of the dynamics, the tire differences, the DRS effect, all in real time.
Absolutely. It's high-level stuff. But in the end, he did it. He went through with the team's plan.
And those F1 blogs really picked up on that, didn't they? Calling him a real team player.
Yeah, muy jugador de equipo, very much a team player, even though, strictly speaking, Albon wasn't his teammate.
That's the key thing. He prioritized the desired outcome for Williams in this case over his own immediate track position.
It's quite remarkable, really. It suggests a kind of strategic maturity, looking beyond just the next corner.
So does this kind of thing get planned beforehand? Like, did they sit down before the race and say, okay, if Albon is chased by Hojar and Sainz is ahead?
Oh, almost certainly not in that level of detail. No way.
Right. Too many variables.
Exactly. Teams definitely talk about general strategies, like, how teammates can help each other defend using DRS, conserving tires, things like that. Standard pre-race meeting stuff.
But this specific scenario, Ferrari helping Williams against Haas.
That feels much more like improvisation. Adapting the general principles to the very specific evolving situation on track. You've got tire differences, track position, the pace of all three cars. It's too complex to script perfectly.
It really highlights the skill of the drivers and the strategists on the pit wall, making those calls on the fly.
For sure. And it brings up another interesting point. how do you actually do that? How do you drive slower deliberately?
Yeah. I mean, we know drivers manage pace for tires all the time, but this is different. It's strategically giving someone DRS.
It is. While tire saving is often about being smooth, avoiding overheating, here Sainz needed to lose time, but in a controlled way.
So how do engineers guide them on that? The blogs mentioned optimizing energy usage.
Yeah, engineers can give advice on, say, being really smooth with the steering before hitting the throttle hard out of corners, or maybe braking a fraction earlier, avoiding really loading up the tires deep into the braking zone. It's about scrubbing off time efficiently.
Without killing your own tires for later, right. That's the trick.
That's the absolute key. He needs to give Albon the DRS window, but he can't ruin his own race by destroying his tire performance for the final laps. It's a very fine line.
And teams must constantly be analyzing this stuff. Vulnerability, DRS zones, top speeds.
Constantly. They know exactly where on the track they're weak compared to rivals, which cars are threats on the straights. The engineers feed that info to the drivers all the time. Watch out for car X in the DRS zone after turn 4, that kind of thing.
And it's not just about the pedals and steering, is it? There's the ERS deployment too.
Right, the electrical energy. Drivers have different maps for deploying that energy. You might have one map for an all-out qualifying lap, another for attacking, another for defending.
So Sainz wouldn't have just been on max attack mode with his ERS.
Probably not. He'd likely be using a deployment strategy aimed at defense, or perhaps even a custom one just to manage that gap to Albon perfectly, keeping him in the DRS zone without letting him get too close or pulling too far away.
And you mentioned his radio call about the lap time, like, when I get into the 33.6 range, I'll pull Alex at a DRS again.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? That shows he's making these calculations instantly. He knows Albon's pace with DRS, without DRS, and he's adjusting his own pace second by second to manage that 1 second gap.
Mind-boggling stuff happening in the cockpit. But, okay, even while doing all this, sometimes Sainz was still faster than Albon. How does that work?
Well, a couple of things could be happening there. Firstly, driver confidence plays a big part.
Like how comfortable they feel in the car.
Exactly. The F1 blog suggested Sainz was just really on it that weekend, felt good in the Ferrari, confident. That alone can give you a little extra pace, maybe a tenth here or there.
Okay. And the other factor, Albon wasn't exactly cruising, was he?
No.
He still had that RB car. You mentioned Hajar earlier, but I think it was an RB car actually right behind him. He was driving defensively too.
So when you're defending, you're taking defensive lines, maybe compromising your exits a bit.
Yeah.
That costs lap time.
Definitely. You're not always on the optimal racing line, so you're inherently a bit slower than your car's absolute potential. So Sainz feeling good, Albon driving defensively. It explains why Sainz could still sometimes have the edge on pace.
And the telemetry data backs this up.
Right.
Especially later on.
Oh yeah, the data was pretty clear. Towards the end of the race, when Sainz was allowed to push, his lap times were significantly faster. We saw like a 1.32.4 from him versus maybe a 1.33.6 from Alpine.
Even if Albon might have lost the DRS detection by then.
Potentially, yeah. And the key thing the blogs pointed out was that Sainz's earlier work, deliberately losing a bit of time to give DRS,
actually helped him save his tires.
Exactly. It was like strategic tire management. So when it was time to push at the end, he had more tire life left than perhaps Albon did. The earlier sacrifice paid off later.
It's a really multi-layered strategy. And how was this seen from the outside? You mentioned the F1 blogs, particularly the British ones.
Yeah, they were apparently very positive, really praised Sainz for it. Some even coined that phrase, the Carlos Sainz effect.
Wow. High praise.
Especially as the blogs noted, because Sainz isn't, a multiple world champion or anything, for the often quite critical international press to highlight his intelligence like that, it says a lot.
It shows they value that racecraft, the strategic thinking, not just pure speed.
Absolutely. It's about driving smart, not just fast.
So, does this performance represent Sainz at his absolute limit that weekend? Was that everything the car had?
Well, it's always hard to say for sure, isn't it? But the general feeling from reading around seemed to be that, yeah, especially his qualifying lap, that was probably pretty close to 100% of what the car and Sainz could deliver right then.
You wrung its neck, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Left very little, if anything, on the table.
And something like this, it does more than just get points in one race, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It must have a wider impact.
Oh, huge. Think about team morale. When a driver pulls off something smart like that, it lifts everyone, engineers, mechanics.
Motivates them.
Definitely. And it looks good for sponsors too, doesn't it? Shows the team is operating at a high strategic level.
Makes the logo on the car seem more valuable.
You could say that, yeah. Stuff like this helps build the team's reputation, which down the line can attract more resources, bigger budgets. It's all part of that continuous push to improve.
There's an interesting story about James Vowles comparing Sainz to, what was it, a lost boat.
Yeah, something like a lost boat in the sea, always on the radio asking, what can we do? How can we improve? Just constantly looking for an edge, apparently.
That really paints a picture of his mindset.
And the blogs made the connection to his father, Carlos Sainz Sr., known for being incredibly proactive and meticulous, too. Seems like that drive runs in the family.
It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
But the big question always is, can they keep it up? Can Williams and Sainz in his future endeavors maintain this kind of momentum?
That's the million-dollar question in F1, isn't it? Development is relentless. If the car development stalls, even these brilliant strategic plays might not be enough later in the season.
It's a constant battle. So let's try and wrap this up then. What are the main things we've learned from this deep dive?
Well, I think first is just Sainz's really impressive strategic thinking and, frankly, his selflessness in that moment.
Yeah, that willingness to potentially sacrifice his own position for a competitor's gain, under team guidance, of course.
And then there's the whole interplay between planning and improvisation. Teams plan general strategies, but adapting them on the fly is where the real skill lies.
And that includes the subtle art of managing pace, not just for tires, but for actual tactical reasons like giving DRS.
Exactly. It wasn't just about raw speed. It was intelligent, calculated racecraft under huge pressure.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How often in any competitive field, whether it's sport or business or whatever, do you see someone actively help a rival like that?
It's rare. And it definitely makes you wonder about the unseen layers, the mix of competition and maybe sometimes quiet collaboration or understanding that goes on.
Something to ponder, for sure. And definitely shows there's always more to Formula One than just who crosses the line first. The strategy, the skill, it's endlessly fascinating.
Absolutely. There's always another layer to peel back.